All right, let's chit chat. Today's video is going to be a little different than normal because I'm just going to let this roll. I'm not going to spend a ton of time editing it because it's Christmas and I've got a lot of stuff on my plate, like my book, which publishes so soon on January 10th, and also my baby, which is due a week after that. So hopefully he arrives on time. But anyway, I wanted to share some of my all-time favorite books. This is a question I got on a previous video, and I wanted to kind of give you a tour of my metaphorical bookshelves, and I'll explain the metaphorical asterisk side note in a sec. As you know, I'm a copywriter by trade. My name's Carrie French. I go by Carrieblogger, but I'm really an author at heart. That is like the next evolution of my writing career right now. You can purchase my dystopian sci-fi novel called Without Disruption at carriefrenchauthor.com. Obviously, I have paperback, the ebook and audiobook are also available for instant digital download at carriefrenchauthor.com. I'm also going to add a hardcover after it officially publishes in January, and it will be available worldwide, around the whole frickin' world, on Audible and Amazon, again, starting after it officially publishes on January 10th of 2022. How exciting. So, a little bit of background on me. I was a voracious reader when I was a kid, absolutely voracious, could not get enough. And I literally set all of the records for reading at my elementary school. We did the AR program back then, accelerated reading, in the early 2000s. I was that weirdo who sat inside with a book during recess if my teachers would allow me to do it, because I didn't have all that many friends. The world of books was much kinder than my peers. Social skills were a little slow to develop, but my reading skills were very ahead of the curve. Then in middle school, my focus shifted to music, and I was so hardcore into music, which is still a huge part of my life. But reading took a huge, back seat. And then in high school, suddenly for whatever reason, it was not cool to read anymore. I don't know who decided that, but I weirdly fell into that social stigma. And then, college, I moved. You would think that having access to a college library is good, but I never went in there except for things I had to get for classes. So yeah, I spent literal years having never read a book for fun. And it was I thought I'd just grown out of reading, and that was it. A few years ago, maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, I started distance running. And in doing so, I discovered audiobooks. And I had never listened to audiobooks because all social stigma that drags us down for no good reason, I thought it wasn't real reading, which is such a stupid stigma. It's really, Carrie, you don't think you can read? I'd spend enough of my day writing and reading. I can just listen to some words and that's fine. But yeah, if I was going to be pounding the pavement for more than 60 minutes at a time, I could just only handle so many 3-minute songs. It was just killing me. So audiobooks it was. And that completely reignited my love of reading. It made me, reconnect with stories in a new way and just got me back into that flow. So some of my favorite books that are on this list were audiobooks that I've read as an adult now. And then a couple that I'm going to list out were ones that I physically read and remember when I was a kid. Speaking of remembering, I have the actual worst memory of anyone on the planet. I literally forget so many things, bafflingly personal details about my life I forget. For example, I was filling out a medical form and it said, have you had any major surgeries ever? And I was like, no. And my husband says, wait, didn't you have a surgery on your shoulder when you were in high school? Yeah, I did. How would I forget that? Literally I forget everything. So the fact that these books have stuck with me and are things that I actually remember about, the plot or the author's name, baffling. And so I think that's proof enough that they're definitely my all-time favorite books, and they're worth reading and remembering. In no particular order, except roughly time of when I read them, here's a couple of my all-time favorite books, and they're on my metaphorical bookshelf because I literally don't read physical books. The first is called Invitation to the Game by Monica Hughes. This was actually a book that my mom read and fell in love with first before I was born, and she then passed the recommendation along to me. It was first published in the 90s, and 2 decades ago when I was trying to find this book to read it, I remember it was impossible to find. But apparently it was republished after the author's death, which is, lucky for you. It makes it a lot easier to find now. And it's a dystopian story about a future where automation has basically wiped out all jobs and opportunities. The majority of people, even highly educated, highly skilled, are living in poverty and don't have opportunities. And so this group of characters gets an invitation to the game where they can enter a simulated paradise. And it kind of takes them to step out of the real world for a while. But exactly how far does the computer take them? You're going to find out. Another all-time favorite that I remember from being a kid was Uglies by Scott Westerfeld. This is another YA dystopian novel, which is actually funny because I did not realize that so many of the books that have stuck with me and really made an impact were dystopian in nature. Yeah, didn't know I was so obsessed with this genre, until I wrote my own. Mine's not YA though. So I definitely think that this one was the strongest of the trilogy. If you're familiar at all, the 3 books are Uglies, Pretties, and Extras. And I just remember loving how descriptive the world building was here. And I'm pretty sure they had magnetic hoverboards or something too, which is just a fun little extra. But essentially the story in one sentence is, at age 16, you can get a high-tech operation that turns you into a pretty, and then your life is basically just one big party. The next one, actually this is baffling that I have this book still. This bad boy that has been loved. Ashes of Roses by Mary Jane Auck is, I would say, my first ever favorite book. It's also the only book that I've ever held on to. I mean, you can see back there my tiny little bookshelf. And even that, I want to get rid of most of those books. I mean, it's a nice little rainbow, but I don't like clutter. I don't like having things that I don't use. I'm a minimalist at heart, I would say. So the fact, again, that I have held on to this copy for literal years through college, through moves, says a lot. So I was obsessed with historical fiction as a kid because I loved learning about, history and culture and just what happened in the world. But I liked that the fiction side of things made it just a little bit easier to digest and stay interested in as a kid. So this was one of the highlights from that little reading sprint period of my life. So it was written for a young audience, and I remember being gripped by it as a kid, even after multiple reads. I've probably read this book 9 times. And it's about 2 Irish immigrant sisters who are starting new lives in New York, mostly alone. The rest of their family is turned away for, reasons, at Ellis Island, and they go back to Ireland, and then they move in with an uncle who had recently immigrated, and he was not expecting them, and that, has a little bit of relationship maneuvering, I guess. But anyway, so they find jobs at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. You know how that ends. I did not know how that ended historically before I read this book as a kid. So I had a little bit of but if you're familiar at all with that historical event, you're not going to go into it as blind as I did. The next one on my list is Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail Honeyman. This was into the adult side of things. I was not fine reading this book. I was both bafflingly obsessed with it. I dove headfirst and just literally gobbled it up. And it's also just heart-wrenchingly, ugh. So yeah, I personally love stories that dive, deeper into mental health, and especially if it's not preachy talking about mental health. I mean, preachy might be the wrong word, but it feels so much more personal and meaningful when it actually comes from the character's perspective of living through that experience of mental health. And especially, I don't know, it sounds messed up, but when it comes from an unreliable narrator, I think it's even more shocking, or it gives you an opportunity to step into their shoes and experience it versus just being told about it. In this case, she's not trying to deceive you at all, but Eleanor Oliphant, just doesn't even know how to comprehend the truth and perceive the world. And so as you're reading it, it's kind of you get her side of the story, and you kind of have to, think what's actually going on. And over time, it becomes more and more clear, where her perspective is coming from. That's the worst synopsis of all time, but that's why I loved it so much. Another favorite thing about this book was her relationship with a friend named Raymond. He's just a big-hearted, nice fellow who looks past her like sharp exterior and problematic quirks, and he really helps her to feel safe enough to, repair past drama. And mini tiny spoiler, not really. I loved that this wasn't a romantic relationship because it could have gone there, and I think a lot of other authors would have gone there, but that's not what Eleanor needed in this book, and I just love when some relationships are truly based in friendship, and I think that that's often missing in contemporary fiction now, and I think that that's just really special. Next on the list is Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card, and not even specifically Ender's Game, but just like the whole Ender's verse. I'm going to try to find a map of the whole Ender's verse to slap up on screen right here. This was the first book that truly immersed me into a literal universe. I could not get enough of this book. I could not get enough of this world. I remember I was hardcore training for a race, and I was just gobbling up all these books. The second I got through one, I was on to the next in the trilogy. And because it's the Ender's Game trilogy, and then there's Bean's trilogy, and then there's the Shadow of the Hegemon trilogy, and the first Fornic War, and the second Fornic War, literally it is so huge and so awesome. This is also a no questions asked science fiction series. So, if you're looking for a really good sci-fi book to step into that genre, you should try this one. I'd say that my favorite book specifically in this Enderverse series isn't even actually part of the Ender's trilogy. It's part of the Shadow series. And I'm pretty sure, it's been a while since I've read it, and like I said, bad memory. But I'm pretty sure that my favorite book was The Shadow of the Hegemon, because basically it turned Earth into a political chessboard, which was just fascinating. And then the last one on my favorites list, because obviously I could go on and on and on forever, but these are the ones that stick in my mind right now. It's called The Flat Share by Beth O'Leary. Total genre change here. Did I give you whiplash on that one? This one is the other half of my reading style. So I read a lot of speculative fiction, dystopian, sci-fi, really hard-hitting, emotional contemporary fiction, and then just fun rom-com chick lits kind of thrown in there as well. And this one, I would say, is just one of the best examples of the chick lit foundation, cute scenario that forces two people together and through which they fall in love. That's what a rom-com has to be. And I think that this book just does it so effectively without being too cliche. Because my biggest complaint with this kind of literature is that it's just often so cliche. It's if it's not cute, it's just cliche. So basically, Tiffy and Leon live in the same flat, but not at the same time. Leon is there during the day because he works at night, and Tiffy's there during night because she works during the day. And basically they, fall in love through mementos and written notes and little passing moments, and it's just freaking adorable. So yeah, thanks for hanging out with me for a bit. Like I said, this is going to be a little different because I'm not going to edit this a ton. I'm just chit-chatting. And I'm usually not a booktuber, but apparently today I am. I am curious what your favorite books are, your all-time, top 3, top 5, whatever. Give me a list of 20, I don't care. But your all-time favorite books that have just stuck with you for whatever reason. Definitely hit me up in the comments and let me know. And then, of course, don't forget to grab a copy of my novel, Without Disruption. It's mostly speculative fiction. It's written like literary fiction, but we're going to technically call it dystopian sci-fi. Okay, if we have to decide. And the pitch is, in a futuristic utopia that guarantees mild contentment for everyone in the lifestyle of your choice, Harrison is depressed and adrift. So, yeah, that's it. Okay. It's available in paperback, ebook, and audiobook at carriefrenchauthor.com, and it officially publishes on January 10th, 2022 on Audible and Amazon. Okay. I hope you all have a lovely day. Get back to reading, okay? Have a, good day. Okay, bye.